Hi, in this video I'll talk about cell references. What happens if you reference to a cell in a formula and you start copying around this formula? What's the basic behavior in Excel and the most important working of the dollar sign in this perspective? And also about referencing to ranges, referencing to cells in other worksheets. So let's get to it. To explain the different ways of referencing in Excel, I set up this worksheet where I want in column A, I want numbers from 1 to 10 or something, and in column E, I want some numbers and adding some values. And let me take the opportunity to explain also the fill handle. So let's start with the fill handle. Well, if I want to have numbers here, I can copy each number 1 here, or I can make it 2 and 3 and 4 and so on, or I can use the fill handle. Let me clear this. Okay, and the fill handle is the right square, is the right under square you see here. And if I go with my mouse cursor over it, then you see that my mouse cursor changes to a plus sign. Now I can drag, and dragging you do by holding the mouse key in, and for example, like here going down and release the mouse key, I can drag this number 1 over this cell, and what does it do? Well, it just copies this cell in all these cells. Yeah. And I get a little uh, extra menu where the standard option is copying cells, or I can choose for fill series. And if I choose this one, it will add with each cell, it will add the number 1. If you want other series to fill it up or something like that, then you can use in the fill option here in the fill menu in the ribbon, you can use series here, but that's not the something I want to explain now in this video. So that's all about the fill handle. Now here I want to do something else. I want to add 15 with each previous cell. And how I can do that, there are many ways to do this, but I just want to do it with a function, the sum function, and I say take the previous cell, and that's cell E2. I'm currently in cell E3, and add 15 with it. So another way to do this would be E2 plus 15. Now it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. Only here I use the function sum. And now, if I copy this function and I go 1 row lower, I get 40. And if I look at the argument, here we had take E2 and add 15, and it gives me 25. Well, take E3, and you see here argument becomes E3, and add 15, and it becomes, of course, 40. So apparently, if I copy 1 row down my function, then my reference to my cell, which is here, E3, goes also up with 1. So using the fill handle, I immediately have the results of taking each cell and add each previous cell plus 15. Yeah. But the behavior of Excel is copying formula or function with a reference to a cell to another row lower. It will add the amount of rows you go lower. It's the same if you go up some rows, it will distract these rows from up. We have here, we have E2. I do copy and I go to row E, row 12 in column E. I stay in the same column and I do paste. Then you see that E2 becomes E11. E11 and add 15 with E11 and I get my number 160. So copying and pasting functions with references to cells in it, it will automatically change the row number of these cells. And of course, it's the same with the columns. If I copy this cell where I reference E2, I reference to the cell E2, and I copy this cell here, or let me do it with the fill handle like this, yeah, then it becomes from E, it goes to F. And it's not because I'm in column F that my letter from my column changes to column F. No, it is because I copy from one column to another and I go one column to the right. Well, I change from the column letter also with one. Let me give you another example about this behavior. Let's say here I just want the same content of E2. I stay of E3. I stay in the same row and I say, well, this cell must be the same as E3. Yeah. So I just use the equal sign, no function, just reference to cell E3. Well, of course, it's 25. What will happen if I copy here and I copy this in cell C3? Well, I go from E and I go one column to the right. Well, then I go from E to F, and that's what you see here. I go from E to F, to column F, and it's 15. So the behavior in Excel is copying functions with cell references in it. Rows down or rows up is counting also in these cells referencing the rows plus or minus. And the same counts for the columns. If I copying function with the cell reference and I go a couple of columns to the right, well, then my column letter in my function will also changes the amount of columns I shift to the right, or the same applies to the left, of course. So this is a nice behavior of Excel. It suited me very good to fill up these cells here every time, adding 15 with each previous cell. But let's do something else. For example, in this column B, I want a running total of these numbers. I want a running total, meaning here I want 1 plus 2, here I want 1 plus 2 plus 3, here I want 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and so on. So maybe formula I change to running total. So let's build our function here, sum, and then A2 till A3. Enter, and here I get my first running total, 1 plus 2. Let's use the fill handle and pull it down, and now I have here, I don't have 1 plus 2 plus 3, but what do I have? 2 plus 3. And here I have 3 plus 4. And you see that's the same behavior told you before. Namely, I go one row down and I have a range from A2 to A3. I go one row down and I have a range from A3 to A4. And here I have a range from A4 to A5. So it's the normal behavior of Excel. But now I don't want that. I just want always this cell A2 where the number 1 is stored. I always want it fixed, and then have the range A3, A4, A5, A6, and then I have the good formula, the good function. How do I do this? How can I fix a row number? And this is a very basic functionality of Excel, and if you already saw some worksheets and formulas in Excel, mostly you see dollar signs. Dollar signs in all kind of formulas. And what do they do? Well, very, very simple. They fix the column or row. Yeah, they fix the row number or they fix the column letter. For example, if I fix here, if I set a dollar sign just before my row, so I can have a dollar sign just before the column, but I'm not showing that right now. I want to have the row fixed, as I told you before. I want to have always row 2 here, and then here row 3, row 4, row 5. So here I would like to have row 2, a range from row 2 to row 5. So every time this A2, this row 2 must be fixed in all my functions here. So if this is the case, I want the 2 having fixed, then I put a dollar sign just in front of the 2. It does not change anything to my function. So if you read a function from somebody else and you see there are a lot of dollar signs in it, just don't think about them, just don't see them, because it will not do anything about the function itself. It just has one goal, and that is if you copy this function around in the same or even in other worksheets or even in other workbooks, it will fix the row or row number or column letter. So in this case, I want the row 2 fixed of the starting cell of my range, and I don't put anywhere else a dollar sign. Then if I start copying this function, the 2 will always stay as a 2. So I have the function, and now I do copy. Let me do it this way. And I paste it one cell down. And what do you see? I go from A2 to A3. I go to A2 to A4. And it's my running total. Yeah. If I copy it one row lower, I go from A2 to A3 to A2 to A5. And that's what I want. I want to add these numbers. So by just placing a dollar sign on the right spot, you have your function and you can copy it around easily. So using the fill handle, I have my running total here. So I had the dollar sign just before the row number here to fix the row number here. Now I want to perform just the same. I want to do just the same here. I want to have a running total. So let me copy the title here like this. I want to have a running total 25 plus 10 and here 40 plus 25 plus 10 and so on. And let me see again at this formula. What does it do? Well, it says go to the previous column, select range A2, A3 and sum them up. Go to the previous column, select range A2 to A4, sum them up, etc. So this is just the same as I need here. Okay, let me copy this function, this formula, and let me copy it in column F. And what do I see? I have column, I have column A, the previous column. In my cell B3, I have column A. I reference to, well, here I have in my cell F3, I reference to column E, namely the previous cell of the previous column of column F. As I have here the previous column of column B, I reference to cells in column A. Well, standard behavior of Excel is all I need just to copy this function to here, and everything works. And I will fix here in column E, I will fix here row 2, and that's the purpose. That's what I need. So just copying the function from here to here and counting on the basic behavior of Excel will change my column letters from in the formula from A to E. And that's what I need. And so here I have my running total. Very easy, very simple. But let's say I want a running total of these numbers and I want it in column K. So let me do this. Running total of numbers 1. Okay. Running total of numbers 1. I want my running totals here. And I'm going to copy my function here to K from B3 to K3. It gives me 0. Why it gives me 0? Because in this function, I'm asking the function sum to add in the previous column rows 2 and 3, cells rows 2 and 3. Well, here it will be the same. In the previous column, I will add rows 2 and 3. So from G, I will add G2 and G3, and that's not what I need. So I need, or I can build a function here, of course, but let's say I want to copy and paste. I need to fix the column A here. So to fix the column, I have to put a $sign in front of the column. So column A is fixed right now, and the row 2 is fixed of the first cell of my range, but the row 3 here is not fixed. Does that change anything on my function here? If I drag it down with the fill handle? No, because I stay in the same column. So I don't change columns, I change rows. So row numbers are changing, and only one row number is changing, the other one is fixed. But I don't change columns, so I stay in column B. So here in my referencing, I stay in column A. But now, if I copy this one here, I will stay in column A. Why? Because I fixed it with a $sign, and that's what you see here. I fixed it with a $sign, so it's referencing to column A, rows 2 and 3. So here I have the running total of the numbers 1 here. Or if I drag this down, I will have the same running total here and here, just copying around functions using $sign to get what I want. Okay, to finish with, let's say I want the running total of numbers 2, like I have here, but I want also add the fixed number. So how can I accomplish this? Well, let's go to my function. Let's put in the second argument and just reference it to cell E2. And here I have 25 plus 10 is 35 plus 1500 is 1535. Okay, let's copy this. Let's drag this down with the fill handle. And I lose my 1500 the moment I come in the next cell. Why? Well, it's the standard behavior of Excel. Here I reference to my cell E2. This is cell E2, you can see it here. Here I go one row lower, I stay in the same column, so it will become E3. But in E3 there is nothing. Of course, you can copy this 1500 down, but you can easily make use of the $sign. And in this case, I want the two, sorry, not the column letter, but the row two, I want to be fixed. I want to always go to this row I2 this way. So referencing to cells in functions, well, you have the relative referencing. In this cell, it would be A3 because there is no dollar sign in the cell here. There is no dollar sign, so we call this a relative reference. It will change if I copy around this function. This A3 will change also depending on how many columns I go left or right, depending on how many rows I go up or down. If you have a dollar sign for the column and for the row, and I have that here, this one here, this what's what we call an absolute reference. The cell is fixed. What I do, where I copy this function, it will always reference in my range. The first cell will always reference cell A2. And then you have the mixed form, like for example here, you see the mixed form where I just have $1 sign before the row in this case. So it's a mixing of absolute and relative referencing. So now you know all about the dollar sign. Let's talk about the referencing of cell itself, and you know already a lot of it. Let's say in my sum function, I can reference to one cell, just give the cell column, letter, and row number. I can reference to a range of cells, and then I give the begin cell, and then the column, and then the end cell, and it doesn't have to be in one column. I can, of course, select multiple columns also. So for this example, I selected from A2 till B11. What I also can do is selecting, for example, two columns just by giving the column letter. I select the entire column, or I don't necessarily need to stay in one column. I can select all the cells from column A till column F. But be aware, if you do things like this, try to avoid this. Why? Because I already showed you in the first video how many cells there are in one column. And we're talking about 1,048,000 cells. So if you select two columns, you already have 2,100,000 cells. And it can slow down your calculations, of course. If you can do this, then of course you can also do this. Selecting, maybe this makes more sense, 2 to 3 or 4, selecting all the cells in a row. All the cells from row 2 till row 4, and the column is always the separator here between the begin cell and the end cell. And the column, by the way, here, the separator is not something that changes with your regional settings. No, it stays always the column. What about referencing to cells in another worksheet? Well, of course you can do that too. Let's create a second worksheet here. And I call this report, and I shall call this one data. First of all, it's a very good way of working to distinguish your data with your reporting. We could, for example, let's say that this is our data and we could summarize it very easily here and make a graph here, and that's okay. But suppose, and mostly it is the case, you have some data like some 1,000 rows or something, or then yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to make summary reports just beneath it, then you always have to scroll down, or you have 20 columns, and then you go on the right side of these 20 columns, you're going to give a graph, then you have to scroll to the right. No, the best is keep the data in one worksheet and have all your summary reports, your graphs in a second, third, and so on. Another advantage of keeping your data in one worksheet is maybe your data will change a week later, a month later, a year later. There is more data to come, or it will change, certain rows will change, certain cell will change. Then you easily can add the data in your worksheet here, and your report, if it's done well, it will be automatically of maybe some smaller edits needed. It will change too. So that's also a good reason to do this. And another reason, of course, is if you show your reporting, or someone else is reading your Excel, your reports, and is interested in your reporting, is not interested in your data, you can simply hide your worksheet. And a worksheet which is hidden, all the referencing to the cells in such a worksheet stays workable, stays valid. Huh? How can we reference to another worksheet? Well, let's begin with the same function, and just after you type the function name in the open round brackets, just click on the data you want and select the cells you want referencing to. And then what I do now is not clicking back. Pay attention, if you click back, I will show it to you later what the problem is, but I just make the closing brackets. Or if I don't need the closing brackets, I need another cell, I can type in the list separator and select another range of cells, and then closing bracket, and just press enter, and I have my result. Yeah. And what's the problem if I go back to this worksheet? Well, we have the same function, opening round brackets. I click in data, I select my data, and here you see what the notation is. To reference to a cell in another worksheet, you just put the name of the worksheet, and then with an exclamation mark, and then just the range you need. Watch what happens if I now click back to report without setting the list separator or the closing round bracket. I go back, and it switches back to report and then exclamation mark. So that's a problem. Don't do that. Just click in the worksheet you want, select your data, and then, for example, finish with your round brackets, closing round bracket, and press enter, and you have your calculation. Let's have a closer look at the formula. So again, same function. And of course, I can type just the name of the worksheet, exclamation mark, and then the range I need. That's it. Closing round bracket, and I've got my calculation. Maybe a last remark about this. What happens if I change the name of my worksheet? Well, it is not a problem, but a space in the name of the worksheet is not a problem, but the notation changes. So now I changed the name of the worksheet to data 1, and you see automatically the name is changed. But because there is a space in my name, then you will need the single quotes around the name of the worksheet. One last thing which can come in very handy is if you go to the tab Formulas in the ribbon, there you have two options, Trace Precedence and Trace Dependence, which give you a view of which cells are used in a calculation, that is Trace Precedence, and trace dependence, which from a cell in which calculation is this cell used. So this can be very useful. For example, here in this calculation, the sum of A2 till 8A8, that's the range here. If I click on trace precedence, which cells are used, well, then you can see the blue block here is used to calculate this formula. If I do this for this formula, for example, then we had the calculation from this range for our total running, and we used also the fixed number here. So with arrows, you have a good view of which cells are used in your calculation. Click on the remove arrows to remove them. I can, for example, ask for this cell, where is it used in which cells to calculate something, in which formulas use cell A8. Well, trace precedence, and I see I have it used in these cells and in these cells. Okay. What will happen if I do trace dependence for this cell? Well, it shows me, you're using it in another worksheet. It was this worksheet, somewhere we used it. Well, here it just said in another worksheet, you use this cell to calculate something. Okay, and here I can finish this video about referencing to cells and the most important dollar sign working.